Hello, thank you for joining me. It's This Week in Tyranny. Thanks for being here once again. It's episode 154. Today is November 14th, 2025. My name is Konrad Rogoz. Let's get started. On this episode, where we're going to feature the story about medical, military, and other kinds of experimentation on humans. Mass secret experiments done on people by their government, their authority figures. This happens around the world. It's not just the United States, but we're focusing on the United States, specifically Americans. The country that thinks is the freest in the world and is the freest in the world in many ways. And yet, this I'm going to struggle with adjectives. I'm going to struggle with finding the words, the language. I may struggle. This is actually a show I'm pretty unprepared for. But there's plenty of content here. All I got to do is just go through the military operations. That's what I want to do. I want to do a rundown of actual declassified or released documentation, stuff that you can look up, stuff that is not my opinion. It's not a debate. It's not my political viewpoints. It's not my personal moral philosophy. It's just actual historical occurrences that happened, all in the last 70 years. Or more recently, where the people are just used as guinea pigs. And the reason I want to highlight this is just to find different ways to really say what I believe is not said in a world where everybody seems to have a megaphone. If you got a camera, if you got a podcast, you got a YouTube channel, you can have a pretty loud voice. And more people have a voice than have ever had it in history, but at the same time, it seems like there's never been a time where a booming, loud voice could be silenced so easily. And you could be silenced. You could be silenced not even intentionally, but just because that's the way it is. Just because we're sardine packed into the same algorithm, the same websites, the same platforms, the same services that we're all using, whether you're in the city or living out in the country. If you want to communicate with people, you're in the same boat. We're all in it together. Similar to these people that we're going to talk about, specifically the people in St. Louis who got sprayed by military planes, C-119s. About 10,000 people got sprayed, and this is just one instance, with zinc cadmium sulfide, and the government was testing biological weapons on the American people, and there's no uproar about this. It's not a big talking point, but for me, this is just another demonstration of things to draw a line in the sand on. This has kind of been a theme of episodes the past couple of weeks. Me drawing a line in the sand and saying enough talking. And it's not a call to rebellion, even though I've done the call to rebellion. That's not where I'm really focusing my efforts. My efforts are not to tell you to go up in arms and overthrow City Hall today. It's actually not my main message. But this is a wake-up call. See, this is a wake-up call to people who are going to waste their lives. They're going to wake up and they'll be too old soon. They'll be in a bad position economically. They'll be in a bad position emotionally, psychologically. I don't think we're getting healthier as time goes on. Humanity as a whole is getting sicker, slower, less motivated, less inspired as time goes on. So before we run out of time and we're in a position where we're not powerful enough to change the world for the better, I'm trying to shake a whole lot of people up. I'm trying to sound the alarm. The wake up call is now. So without further ado, with that sloppy ass chaotic intro, let me just play the story that I talked about with St. Louis, and I'm going to mute myself, and hopefully you hear this well. Sorry for any technical, rough around the edges stuff.
Now to a News Nation exclusive investigation into a secret government experiment that was carried out in St. Louis. Residents tell us they still remember a mysterious fog. Children would run through it. Mothers would try and close their windows against it. For decades, they all had questions, and now we're seeking answers. The United States Army now admits that it sprayed a chemical that contained cadmium, a known carcinogen, on a neighborhood of more than 10,000 people. Critics say this was done with no warning and no consent. Well, tonight we return to the site of that demolished neighborhood and speak with former residents who believe the government turned them into human test subjects. Although the Army admits that the test happened, it is not admitted to harming the residents. Natasha, News Nation's.
So the harm is almost secondary in this case. It's not insignificant harm, of course, it matters, but it's only one of the concerns. See, I want to talk about the concerns first so we could frame this issue, and this is very important. We could frame the argument, just like if we were talking about immigration enforcement and borders and then the military the last couple episodes. And it's important to frame those arguments because it's way too easy to take two steps and you're arguing about the details of something where you've already lost the argument because you don't define the boundaries, you don't define your terms, and this is just another way that you can get lost in the sauce, so to speak, and you can get drowned out in this gigantic chorus unison of voices on the internet and in life. So when it comes to experimentation on humans, secret experiments done on humans, there are many concerns. One of these concerns is like, was harm done? Did they actually harm these people, right? And now I'm not talking just our concerns when I'm talking about why I wouldn't want to be experimented on. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about from the government's perspective. Imagine anybody taking part in this. Scientists, because scientists had to take part in this. Doctors had to take part in this. Military had to take part in this. I think even media and channels that really seem far, far away from such an experiment happening, that people in all kinds of different industries had to know about this. In the industry, right? The production of these chemicals, not just the scientists that produce it, but then the companies that produce it. You know, the military doesn't just produce things by themselves. They have contracts. They have contracts with businesses, and those businesses sell products. And then, in addition to their private sector work, they have government contracts. It's actually how the biggest corporations get made, because they work with the government. They work for the government, right? Which means they're getting paid with taxpayer money. Anyway, if I was the government or I was anyone involved in that kind of structure, I'd be concerned about health and safety, because obviously if we spray something, if we test something and kill people, that's going to be pretty bad for us, right? You think about going past that, like you think about your reputation. Think about the level of trust that you're going to destroy from the people. The people are not going to trust you. Your credibility is gonna take such a dive. If I was trying to stay in power and I was in the government, I would not want to do that. I would not want to completely shock these people awake, right? Think about them giving the ammunition for this kind of a wake-up call. This is a totally psychotic thing to do. You think about going beyond that. You think about morale and loyalty of the people who are actually carrying this out as well. You know, you've got people there and they're following orders. They're putting on the uniform, but they're spraying stuff on cities. You're really not you're not giving your troops the kind of orders that inspire them to to be effective, to believe in what they're doing. Let alone if the people found out about it, you lose out on morale so much. All these things to be concerned about, but what I find the most distasteful about this, what I find the worst about this, is just that it shows like a total disrespect. You would only do this to people that you really thought you owned. If you really think you own them and you have no respect for them and you don't fear them at all, just like just like an infestation. You wouldn't do this to your pets. I mean, animals are one thing. You wouldn't do this to your pets. You wouldn't really do this to animals outside. You'd do this to someone that you disdain having to live with, live next to, kind of like cockroaches, right? Kind of like we're talking an infestation. When we're talking about spraying 10,000 people, is absolutely that's a one-to-one comparison in the symbolism and the imagery and you think about the language, the everything about it just says infestation, extermination. This is what it is, and this is what the government thinks about its people. I mean, how else can you explain experimenting on people? By spraying a chemical, and they're not spraying a chemical for, testing, I don't know, some sort of product. They're testing the dispersal of chemical and biological weapons. So they're testing killing machines by spraying them on people who are just regular citizens. So they're using them as target practice, literally. Like you hear this about soldiers doing this to enemy civilians that they've captured. And these are war crimes. These are like the worst of the worst that we hear from. And we're talking about during peacetime, the United States government doing it to its own people. Let's hear a bit more of this.
Truth may still be buried.
The fog drifted through the streets like a ghost.
That's exactly what it looked like, a thick fog.
It was summertime and it was hot. We would just run through it as fast as we could and try to just cool ourselves off. It stuck to you.
The spray was so foul as far as the odor. It made some of us have headaches, nausea, dizziness.
That's what I remember. It made me sick.
It wasn't the weather. It was an eerie smoke descending from rooftops, rolling from the backs of trucks.
Regular flatbed truck, but it had a big machine on the back. And it had a big nozzle that really sprayed a fog you couldn't even see through. It was that thick. And it really, we felt it as it would adhere to our skin. And as far as the guys on top of the buildings, they tried to portray them to us as maintenance workers. But we was like, what is a maintenance worker doing? And basically a hazmat suit. And they had masks and goggles.
In the 1950s and 60s, in secret, the U.S. Army sprayed zinc-cadmium sulfide into the air of a St. Louis housing project, a largely black neighborhood called Pruitt-Igoe.
It was a lose-lose situation for us in Pruitt-Igoe. We were subjects. We were subjects.
They didn't ask for our permission. We didn't ask for them to spray us. My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
We're standing at where Pruitt-Igoe used to be here in St. Louis, and it's hard to believe more than 10,000 people used to live here. As we
Muted. They use them as guinea pigs. Indeed. This should go to show everyone that this overlap of government, military, and medical, not everyone within those institutions, but some part of them, which you have to say, you have to suspect that if this is such an extreme thing, and it went on during that time to do this experimentation, not only it was not only unsafe, it was dangerous for them, for their reputation, for their respectability, for the morale, all these things that I talked about, and they still did it, which makes you think it could be done again, which makes you think this is representative, more or less, of the general, of the majority, right? It's not just a minority, or if it is just a minority, it's a powerful enough minority that the majority doesn't oppose it, right? I hope you get what I'm saying. Bottom line, they see people as disposable, dispensable. They got no respect for us. They got absolutely no respect. So people hear me talk about we should be rebelling against the government, they think that I'm saying something extreme. spraying literal poison from trucks as they're watching. You know, you've got people on trucks with like big sprayers. You imagine like big industrial smokestacks of fog, and they're testing biological weapons. And they're not doing this to their enemies, they're doing this to their constituents, their shareholders. You would say these are like shareholders, right? The people that vote for you, that they support you, so you want to give them something in return, right? That's the way you do in business. That's why corporations break all these rules, because they want to, they're loyal only to their shareholders. Well, we're the shareholders for the government. They're supposed to give us something back. And instead, what do? They do the worst of the worst. They do human experimentation in a very pest control kind of a way. I'm really gonna like beat that up. I'm really trying to stress it. I know I've repeated myself a bit in these first 15 minutes of this show that I really want to keep brief, but I really need people to understand this, that this is not normal. This is not negotiable. If something like this happens, you would never talk to that person again. Like, if you knew that a coworker of yours was doing experiments on the people that you work with, or say you're working in some kind of an office building, right? And you're on the 3rd floor, and on the 5th floor where they do all kinds of paperwork over there, and you guys see each other, maybe twice a day, and you found out that they put something in their coworker's drink. Probably not you, right? Probably not. You're not at risk, but someone got experimented on. Didn't even have to harm them, right? But just that they put some kind of a substance in their drink just to see what happened, and they admitted to it. Would you work in that place? Would you continue to work in that place? Would you continue to have a job there? The answer is no. No way. No way. It's a deal breaker for any type of an interaction. Any type of an interaction. There could never be any respect. There can never be any conversation between people like that when they do that to you. All trust has been broken. Okay, so that was a report from News Nation, which looks very much like mainstream media, but I don't believe it is. They have 2.5 million subscribers. I really need to investigate, see where they're getting their funding from, because this is comes across as a very mainstream story, but they're exposing the army for.
We bring our drone up. You can see it's mostly just an empty lot now, overgrown with trees. This used to be filled with 33 high-rise buildings. It was all demolished in 1976.
33.
And according to the National Research Council, St. Louis was chosen for spraying experiments because it had similar characteristics to Soviet targets like Moscow in terms of population density and terrain and proximity to a river.
So this, of course, happened during the Cold War, this operation, right? So everything was against Russia, and allegedly they chose the St. Louis area, dense housing project area, because it's similar to Moscow. Those buildings looked similar to socialist housing in Eastern Europe around that time, for sure. And I think that's part of this story, but the truth of that story is that they weren't thinking about the Russians, and if they're if the military was testing things with the premise of this being effective on Moscow and St. Petersburg, etc., that's because that's how they see the American people. Because at the end of the day, this is about the civilians domestically. I've always said that war in the last 100 years, it's basically been a theater, because the real enemy is the government's own people. They fight the army of the other nations, but in reality, all governments fear their own people. Those are their enemies. And as you can see, they treat you like that. So let's begin our little investigation. This was called Operation Large Area Coverage. Large area coverage was actually bigger than the St. Louis testing, but it included that St. Louis situation. You see, United States Army operation which dispersed zinc cadmium sulfide, okay, over much of the United States and Canada in order to test dispersal patterns and the geographic range of chemical or biological weapons. mainstream admitted knowledge. But it's not a hot issue. It's not a hot talking point for some reason. I would never let this go. I would never let this go, you know? And I'm surprised it's taken until episode 154 to do an episode specifically about this. Because I remember 15, 20 years ago starting to learn about some of this stuff. I know some of the phrase like Tuskegee experiment, you know, MK Ultra. We remember those. But large area coverage I did not know about, and I did not know that they sprayed people specifically to test chemical weapons on the American population. And really what inspired this episode, without, you know, no hiding it, is the goddamn chemtrails that are in the sky day in and day out in my area, in the Chicagoland area. I took pictures today. I'm actually going to get I'm either going to take my camera in my car, or I'm going to get a phone that takes better pictures, because it is amazing, and the photos don't do it justice. But it has been heavy recently in the Chicago area. For those of you who are listening who are from here, you know, you've seen it, and you'll see like 3 or 4 lines spaced out, and each of them has like an arc. Right, so you imagine kind of like the letter J. You have the long part, and then it curves towards the bottom. So not fully all the way around, but say like a 90-degree turn. So it's that kind of a sharp arc, kind of like one of those pointed swords, like an Arabian sword. And you see them with the same kind of an angle, like parallel in the way that the arc is the same, and these are not commercial flights. You could never say that's an airplane with people in it. You couldn't say it's a, you know, just that is a coordinated action. It's definite. You could see a definite dispersal effect. It's not just something from the wings. The contrail effect, which I'm aware of. I know about contrails. You could see that what comes out, it expands so much. Like if you looked at the relative area, this expands by like 10 to 20 times, you know, like 1,000%. In the same way a can of spray insulation expands. Like real good insulation, not the Home Depot cans. They're expanding so much. So these are aerosols, the same kind that they were testing, in my opinion. So that's what made me think of it, right? And of course, you can find September 1950, 6 simulated attacks on the San Francisco Bay Area. Think about how many people were there. March and April 1952, 5 trials off the coast of South Carolina and Georgia under Operation Dew. It was concluded that long-range aerosol clouds could obtain hundreds of miles of travel and large area coverage when disseminated from ground level under certain meteorological conditions. So they actually do this from the ground. It was tested. Of course, they know that it's feasible from the air, which they're doing, which it seems like they already knew. Here's the St. Louis one in the 1950s. And again a decade later, the Army sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide via motorized blowers atop Pruitt-Igoe at schools from the backs of station wagons and via planes. So, no debate there, right? Admitted. 1950s. You know, the 1950s wasn't a long time ago. I mean, there are people I talk to who are born in the 1950s. You know, this isn't a million years ago, guys, and they did this to the people. Operation Dew is another one. This is what I do. You know, you could criticize Wikipedia as a source, but it's a good starting point as far as what is like accepted information, accepted knowledge. You know, I don't think any historians would debate all these operations that I'm about to go through. How can you? They're admitted Army operations. Operation Dew refers to 2 separate field trials conducted by the United States in the 1950s. They were designed to study the behavior of aerosol-released biological agents. What is this aerosol stuff? What are they talking about? I don't know. Hey, does that look Does that look like what we see in the sky? You know, it's an aerosol is, oh, mist and fog are aerosols, and that's what it is. And you can tell by the color. You can tell by the, you know, I really need to debate some people on chemtrails. I think, because I know that there's some of that on the internet, but it is just so crazy. It's gotten so blatant that yeah, I really need to talk to people that don't see it, that don't know about it, because it's hard for me to even gauge where people generally are with this stuff. Yeah, I think history will show that people are going to look pretty damn stupid who insist that this chemtrail thing is a conspiracy. You know, when you've got stratospheric aerosol injection and solar geoengineering being not only proposed but already auctioned off to Silicon Valley companies to be doing it, to be working on it, and you've got the United Nations, or the European Union, calling commissions on it, like emergency commissions, to discuss it, taking action against it. It's just hilarious. Hilarious that people would deny something like this. Hilarious that people would deny that the government sees them as guinea pigs and rats and roaches. But it's really not that hilarious. And we're 2 operations down. Let's go to the next one. Project 112. Project 112. It was a biological and chemical weapon experimentation project conducted by the Department of Defense from 1962 to 73. So 10 years later. This is under Kennedy. I know a lot of people think that the Kennedy was he ended up he was going to expose, right? People say he exposed the Illuminati and was killed because he stood up to Israel, right? All this stuff, and not dismissing any and all parts of that. My respect to all the researchers, but everybody, whoever became president, this is what they were doing. Every commander-in-chief had some sort of a level of human experimentation that they put the green light on. So to me, they're trash. They're all pieces of trash, and I won't do any euphemisms about that. Project 112 primarily concerned the use of aerosols to disseminate biological and chemical agents that could produce controlled temporary incapacitation, meaning to knock people out, right? What is controlled temporary incapacitation? Oh, this project was coordinated from a Deseret Test Center in Utah. I clicked on this already, and I found something very interesting. Yes, this. Their logo, right? So this is their headquarters in Utah over them. Utah is interesting because of the Mormon connection there. But anyway, not to get into that. You got Satanism all over the place. Look at this globe with the clouds around it, the clouds encircling it. This is a really grim imagery, I would say. Grim imagery. This kind of a cloudy. You could see it. It's like a. It's like a toxic. It is just a toxic mist enveloping the earth. It's a disgusting, heavy blanket just coated over the beautiful earth, and that's what's going on in the skies. And so many people, I think about all the people in this city that don't even notice it, and they've had another great day, and they've had another day of being sprayed, pledging their allegiance. If not literally, then everybody's still voting, everybody's still talking shit, debating political minutia. So everyone is still standing at attention for the same people that chemically and biologically did an experimentation test on people 2 generations back, Okay, we're not even halfway done. This is Operation Sea Spray. Operation Sea Spray was a 1950 U.S. Navy secret biological warfare experiment in which these two types of bacteria, they were sprayed over the San Francisco Bay Area. Why? In order to determine how vulnerable a city like San Francisco may be to a bioweapon attack. There has been speculation that the experiment may have contributed to 1 death and at least 10 illnesses. I don't care about those numbers, right? Because I don't believe them. Whenever it comes to the safety of chemicals, it's a joke. It's a joke, though. There are all these things that are like known carcinogens that were generally recognized as safe just a few years back. And it'll be years before people see what how risky Ozempic is and all these drugs. It's just insane, insane. And when I think about spraying aerosols in the air, susceptibility to bioweapons, chemical, biological, all this obsession with chemical and biological, then when you think about that, and then you think about the pandemic and how it's been floated, that idea that maybe a vaccine should be distributed via a spray over the population. Why even do the whole thing with the needles? I didn't say that. People are saying that in international meetings and think tank gatherings, So with this one, Operation Sea Spray, seems like some people reported that they were damaged at the time. They had real emergency issues, complications. There was some sign of some sort of a lawsuit. I haven't really looked into this. The Nevin family appealed the suit all the way to the Supreme Court, which declined to overturn lower court judgments. So the bacteria was unproven to be responsible for Nevin's death. And it'll always be unproven. They'll never say that the government is really responsible for anything serious like this. Nobody will be held responsible for the Jeffrey Epstein thing. That's the way this works, because if such a precedent was set, it would start the domino effect. See, the modern day government is like the Catholic Church at the height of their power, right? And their rule, which is infallibility, is the name of the game. So they're never going to admit something like that. It doesn't matter. The truth be damned. They don't care what the truth is. The people in the courts, they work for them at the end of the day. It's just like, not every scientist or doctor was involved in an experiment like this, but for damn sure the doctor next to him is not going to call him out and expose the whole profession, because the whole profession is going to gather around and they're going to defend that. They're going to defend that portion of their own craft or of their own fellowship that is in bed with the government. And that's how it's always been, because the independent institutions of society have never been independent. It's always been this. They've always been able to experiment on their own people. It's just during this time period, the 50s and 60s, they were just able and willing to do it in such a crazy way, to drive trucks down the street and just spray this big thick fog and admit it. Absolutely crazy. So, more evidence of military just spraying people, But it's not time for war, right? It's not time for rebellion. No, I know. We just have to do more podcasts, right? Operation Big Buzz. What is Operation Big Buzz? They literally called it this, man. This article is from 4 years ago. As COVID vaccine arrives, keep in mind this 2021, as COVID vaccine arrives, many blacks in Savannah haunted by memory of infamous mosquito experiment. So Operation Big Buzz, they released like millions of mosquitoes who were not infected with anything specifically, but they wanted to see if they drop a fucking cloud of mosquitoes, are they actually going to get to people, and are they going to actually start feeding off them, right? Because if they can, then all right, let's start testing how we can use the mosquitoes to attack people and inject them with a biological chemical agent. Now fast forward a couple of decades, you got Bill Gates talking about doing that with the bioengineered mosquitoes, right? So, this is historical context of what is happening today. But there's an interesting, I like the COVID vaccine element to this, and I want to talk about this. Because once again, you see that the victims of this are black Americans. Okay? A lot of black men. Which I draw the distinction. I think the biggest genocide in America has been against black men. And really black families. I think that's a society that's been completely destroyed, and they have been destroyed in this country. It's been crazy. It's been crazy to as an outsider coming from Poland, where I saw one black person ever in Poland till I came here. Well, I saw a lot of them on TV, and they actually they were my first teachers. They were the first people that I looked up to. My first role models were rappers, and then anyway, they say black Americans are more hesitant than whites to take the COVID vaccine. Reasons for that hit close to home in Savannah, and include a classified military operation in the 1950s that dropped hundreds of thousands of mosquitoes that many believe were infected with disease on Carver Village. They didn't tell anybody, and it happened, said Chatham County Commission Chairman Chester Ellis. And so that leaves some apprehension, especially when you have residents of that area who've been there since the 50s. So my job as neighborhood president and also as the chairman of the county commission is to kind of calm the storm down, to let them know that this vaccination is not like that. They say it's not like that, right? So this is, of course, of course they will, and things have changed since that time. But I love the distrust, the black men and women, their distrust of the government is something that I really appreciate. I think it, whether it's reasonable or not, it's just true, and it's refreshing to see someone else share that kind of a concern. And it is crazy that people just like loyal dogs, but abused dogs, like you think about a dog that has just a terrible, horrible owner, and just gets beat and abused, and the dog just can't help but be a dog and just go to his owner and expect just love and care. And what do they get? They get brutalized, they get violence. That's what I see from the people. They have no distrust. They have like total naivete. You can't even say it's projection. Is it projection? I don't know, but it's so fucking sad to see, and it's actually pathetic, right? It's not so much sad as it is pathetic. The Kaiser Family Foundation, which has been tracking attitudes about the vaccine for months, at this time they indicated 43% of black adults in the U.S. are taking a wait-and-see approach to the vaccine. I think this number should be 100%. That is my outlook on anything, any substance really, that is put out to the masses, to a mass number of people. This is just rational skepticism. Oh, I'm going to wait and see. If I don't need something, I'm going to wait and see. There's a new... say you find a can of something in the street, and you're with a bunch of your friends. You're like, think about kids finding it. Are you going to eat it? Are you going to eat the whole thing? I'm going to wait and see. I'm not that hungry. I can wait. I don't need to eat that. If you eat that and you feel good, you say it tastes good, no, I'll eat it. But that compares to 26% of white adults. So that's almost twice. That's 50% more, definitely. In the same poll, who say that when an FDA-approved vaccine for COVID-19 is available to them for free, they would wait and see how it is working for other people. That's only 1/4 of them did that. Now, when they say white adults, they're including Polish people, they're including Ukrainians, they're including all of the different nations of people, Russians that are here, the immigrants. And I would say if you talked about the immigrants, that wait and see approach is going to be pretty high, kind of like with black adults. Now what do immigrants from Eastern Europe have in common with black adults in the United States? They've experienced what it's like to be living within a society that could kill them at any moment, and their life has very little value. Being in those socialist nations, the Soviet satellite nations, was just not only life that was totally totally broken down, infrastructure all fucked up, right? You think about socialism there, it's an absolute wonder that everyone didn't starve at the time. But you know how little a human life is worth. Someone disappears and who knows who's going to find you, what quarter you're going to go to. We've seen the harsh reality. And I say we, it's not really we, because I was born after that time. But people have seen how quickly you can disappear and no one will remember you. And they continue to talk about this, the infamous Tuskegee study, in which hundreds of black men in Alabama had syphilis and they went untreated, so they basically just studied them throughout their lives as their health deteriorated and all that. Yeah, Tuskegee experiment is kind of the big one you start learning about when you're exposed to this stuff in military experimentation. Tuskegee experiment makes me think of the Statesville malaria experiments, which I also missed that one, so I don't know how many people know about that. Statesville is a prison not that far from where I live, right? I believe it's Indiana, on the Indiana-Illinois border. So Statesville, their malaria experiments, what they did is they took the prisoners that were there, right? Long stay prisoners, in the big house. And they did all kinds of experiments with malaria. So they would infect them, right? They would infect them, germ theory, terrain theory aside. These people got infected with toxic stuff. They were already in toxic conditions, and it was pretty nasty. To keep it short, I'm not going to open up more articles for you. But one thing that stood out to me is that when the Nazis were on defense at the Nuremberg trial, so the Statesville malaria experiments were before World War II, right? So when the Nazis, who were doing medical experiments on the Polish, the Jewish, the Czech, all the people that were in those countries that Germany invaded, in the concentration camps, of course the most infamous is Dr. Mengele, so-called doctor, who did all these experiments on people. When these Nazis later, they went to the Nuremberg trials, and then the whole world saw and asked them, what defense do you have for these war crimes that you committed? You did all these experiments on people. You took people prisoner and you injected women with the stuff that just totally destroyed them from the insides. You did medical experiments on infants. You did the most kinds of depraved, inhumane stuff that you can imagine. They did it there, and their defense was, what we did is just like what they did in those Statesville malaria experiments, because they took prisoners that were there, and what the Nazis ended up saying is that they had a choice to participate in those experiments. Of course, the word choice does not apply in a prison environment, because you're already there against your will, right? So for what kind of informed consent you can give is, of course, it's just a stupid thing to consider. They're already being treated like animals over there, and it went to another level with the malaria experiment. So I'm not saying the Nazis were correct in their defense, but it shows that they were close enough that the Nazis, bad, this the worst people ever. What did they do? They wave their hand and say, oh, your government in America is doing the same thing. They called out the hypocrisy of that statement. And they may have not been all the way right, but they were partially correct in that defense. Because there's a long list of horrible medical experiments. I actually skipped a whole lot of experiments that were not done in a tandem with the government. That was just individual doctors doing things, just doctors, and they, one guy just put a needle straight in exposed brain matter of a patient, told the patient, but the patients didn't understand. Even it was even worse than it is today. People used to think that doctors were like God men, and they definitely didn't understand the human body. So these were more like mystery healers, right? These were like gurus. So people went to them, and the doctor knows damn well that this person is going to die, and they're not really testing a treatment. But he tells the patient that they're going to test some treatments, and he uses the medical language jargon. And this is one case. I'm paraphrasing it. I could open it up, but there was this woman, and she agreed to it, but of course the implication was that they're actually trying to save her life. But no, he knew that she was going to die, and he was just testing things out just to gain knowledge. And there are varying levels of depravity when it comes to those kinds of medical experiments. A long, long list of those. Okay, let me get my bearings here. See, medical experiments are different from military, because even the most hideous, worst doctors, when the doctor's doing, at least they're following the scientific framework to some degree. At least they're going to make it look like an experiment, or at least they actually are trying to find some answers about the human body. Whereas what we just looked at with the Army, with the United States military, they're literally spraying an entire area of the population to learn about what? Biological and chemical weapons. So it's about killing people. They're damaging people and harming them to get better at killing people, damaging and harming them. And that's what the armed forces are in the business of. And I find it amazing that the President of the United States, he has very little to say about the economy, about society, about economics, but he's the commander-in-chief. He's the number one military leader. This is what it is. We've been living in a military state. And more than anything, this is what has destroyed the country as well. You could say that it's socially, you could say that it's economically, but the one thing that has totally desecrated the graves and the sacrifices and the lives of the founding fathers and the really everyone who ever stood up against persecution and oppression, from the women during the witch trials and all throughout history. It's a desecration of them, that this country, America, who accomplished the loftiest, it went the furthest toward a utopia or a better world, a world where people actually got a chance to live life and express and reach heights that have never been reached before. That nation has turned into a military state that sprays its own people, that waves the American flag and says freedom and liberty and justice for all, and they're aiding the genocide in Gaza. They're all over the world. They're bombing boats in Venezuela. They slaughtered people in Vietnam, Korea, all over the world. They've been in every country. They got military bases everywhere. And people think that this is a political system. It's not a political system. It's not an economic system. This is a military state. It's a military dictatorship. It is a police state that we're living in. And it's becoming a biometric AI surveillance state as well. It's a brave new world type of society. So, medical experiments, army experiments. Let me switch over and we'll look at some more Psychological warfare experiments. See, this is operation. This is Project Bluebird. It's officially called Project Artichoke. This is the predecessor of MK Ultra. So a lot of people know about MK Ultra, where the CIA was testing how to program people and basically make them into like robotic soldiers. Well, Project Bluebird was the predecessor of that. You see, they drugged them all kinds of drugs and different kinds of tortures and things to basically try to put people under mind control. I'm highlighting it here: mind control and hypnosis. Their primary goal was to determine whether a person could be involuntarily made to perform an act of attempted assassination. How to make the kamikaze soldier the perfect assassin, right? So when you look at all the lone gunmen, when you look at all the mass shootings, you look at the terrorist attacks, remember who was doing it first. Remember who was trying to do it in 1950? The CIA, the American government. It's a mind control program. The question they asked was, here it is: can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation? So they're asking, can we get a person, how do we get a person to be our slave to such a degree that they'll even go against their own family, their own life, their own inherent biological coding? How can we make them a slave to the degree that they will basically curse God and do the opposite? A complete satanic inversion. And this is what they were trying to accomplish. I throw that in here with the experimentation, although it's a lot different, because these other 5 or 6 or 7 operations where they sprayed the people and it was done by military members, this is experimenting not on the people, not on the civilians, but their own members. So this is the kind of stuff that they're going to do to their own people, their own ranks. And you know, the big issue with this is that they see the civilian population as a herd, what I talked about in the beginning, that they see as like an infestation, right? Pests. But another issue, really separately from all this, is that the individual himself, to them, like human life itself, is seen to these people as just a tool to be used. So it's not even human. It's not a human interaction. This is the interaction you have with an object. No regard for what the object wants. You just move the object. You just toss it aside. And if this is how we're seen, then we should accept that that's the reality we live under. And if I'm seen as completely insignificant, just a speck of dust to someone, then I won't waste my time. They can see me however they want to see me. The government can, I don't need them to respect me. They can do whatever they want. The point is, I'm not going to respect them. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm definitely not going to project any kind of human values onto them. I'm definitely not going to help them with their goals. I'm definitely not going to let them use my life, my property. I'm definitely not going to work together with them to accomplish a common goal, where in their common goal, I don't have a say. I'm just an object. So, most of these occurred in the 50s and 70s, and I think this is the only thing you could... I don't think it's debatable what the military did, what the government thinks about its people. All this stuff, I don't think this is really a big debate. Where there is a debate is what happened since then. Why did so many of these things happen in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and then it just stopped? So what happened? Though I feel like the only justification is that was then and now is different. And that's what people always say. Because there is such a deep historical record for all the sins of the government and their transgressions of anybody in authority. So people just say, yeah, things used to be bad back then. But things are changing. You know, things are changing, and you know that they say that I'm wrong to want to take down the whole entire system because we can change it and the system is changing. And we need to keep participating in these structures, military, politics, voting. So I want to talk about that. Why did it seem to stop around the 70s? So after this boom of human experimentation, there are a couple of possibilities. Either it like stopped, it ran its course, so the data was gathered and they got their answers, right? Or the study progressed to how it happens in science. Study goes on, experiment goes on, they get their answers, the thing works. Okay, so the the subject of the study, like the whatever was being studied, is now implemented. It becomes part of production, part of common practice, right? That's why you do an experiment. You want to start doing something. So either the experiments were successful. Option two is that this continues. It continues, and the whistle is just not being blown on it. It doesn't come out, right? That it's better covered up. That it's better concealment, better censorship. That's the second option. And the third option is that this kind of experimentation on the people continues, and it's not even so much that it's secret, it's just taken on a different form. And a mix of that second and third one, this is what I think is happening out in the skies today. Because you absolutely see big, gray, non-natural clouds covering the sky that are clearly a dispersal. It's clearly a dissipation of these trails that are coming from the planes that create a blanket or a cover in the sky, and it stays up there in the sky. So I'm not saying that it is like the St. Louis stuff that caused, that stuck to your skin and made you get sick. I don't think it's that, but you could say 100% that it is stopping sunlight, it is stopping natural weather cycles from occurring. The amount of light, really, and that's all. You can't deny that, and that's so significant. How much warmth, sunlight hits the earth on a given day, and then all the cascading effects of that, right, in a self-renewing ecosystem. But if you ask me, it's not just that, it's all of the above. I think that these experiments did stop to a degree. They ran their course, they were successful. Some of these, I'm sure they go on, and people just don't know. You look at all these operations, and this is before the internet. So they did things differently then. This is why they don't land on the moon today. It would expose, clearly there are some things that it would expose, right? So there are some things that never occurred again, like the atomic bomb explosion that the United States dropped on Japan never was repeated. You never saw another big mushroom cloud, and you never saw another moon landing. And I'm sure I could find many more examples of something like that. I also do not expect there to be another world war. The age of wars, as we know it, is done. It's just targeted actions and drone warfare and little, not little, but smaller scale, regional and local genocides, massacres, slaughterings. That's what war has become. So it's a different time. And maybe the country of America is not so patriotic today that the military can go spray the streets and they wouldn't be exposed, that they wouldn't be all over TikTok. That's possible. But also we do have the kind of a country today, the kind of a world today, where people are much more respecting, not of soldiers and military, but definitely of scientific and medical authority. And the pandemic of 2020, it was absolutely that global phenomenon, an exercise in worldwide human. I'm gonna be like Kanye. I'm not gonna say what kind of a I'm not gonna say what kind of a study it was. It was experimentation. I tried to break that up because I know certain keywords they definitely get your channel shut down, which would be painful because at this point I think it would be my third strike on my channel. But hey, that's what we do. Listen, if you shut down Truth and Law, I'm just gonna make a different channel, and YouTube's just gonna give me another chance of going viral. Maybe I'll dye my hair, and nobody will know it's me, right? So things have changed since these experiments all occurred, but also the procedure has changed because you get public-private partnerships now, and I talked about this before, that they're now outsourcing this kind of military action against the people. They're outsourcing it to the private sector, so you're going to have the corporations handle it. That's the new way that things are done. The things that, government doesn't really get their hands as dirty anymore. A lot of the dirty work that the government used to do, the CIA, MK Ultra, this is sloppy shit, man. They don't do this anymore. It's gotten outsourced to the private sector. You see, it's not only our lives that have gotten corporatized. It's not only our stuff that's made in China. The government itself got corporatized. They're having private sector military companies do these things. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, right? And you talk about big time financing, BlackRock, So, intentionally so this has happened. The government has gone corporate. Because what is the benefit of a corporation? It's that you have limited liability. So you're not going to fall apart. You're not going to have like a Nixon scandal. Or Nixon did the stuff, Watergate, and now the guy's going to get impeached. Now he's out. It's not going to happen anymore. You're not going to have another project, MK Ultra or Naomi. Because now it's going to be a corporation that did it. And the United States government, the army is going to say, we didn't do that. Those are some bad actors. Somebody got hacked. We didn't do that. A Raytheon employee did that, right? BAE Systems did that, They'll say, our policy absolutely does not endorse that. We stand against that, and we are committed to, following our vision of our founders. We have parted ways with that former employee, and we sincerely apologize, or whatever they say. They're not even going to apologize. Corporations don't apologize, It'll just be corporate language bullshit. So it's become a lot harder to even see what is being done to the people, because this solar geoengineering that I talked about, it can just as easily be a private company that it does this. And this is where you think about a guy like Elon Musk that has his own fleet of rockets. He has his own, resources to be able to do what formerly only a military was able to do. This is technocracy now. It's going to be done by the experts, right? Not according to nations. It's going to be according to a professional expert class. This is the vision of the technocrats. So, a lot of things I'm throwing at you. But now to say, okay, maybe it's not what it used to be with these experiments, but you have experimentation, or should I say torture of the population in a different way, because the U.S. military is engaged in continued battles against its population in different ways. Raytheon is the company that I think came up with this. This is the active denial system. Basically, I'm not going to read all this right now so much. The active denial system is like a microwave beam. So it's a heat ray. It's literally a laser ray. But what it does is when it hits you, the wavelength is such that it burns the shit out of you. I mean, this burns the hell out of you. But it only burns like 0.4 millimeters of your skin or something like that. So it's not going to burn you to death. It's not going to burn a hole in your hand. It's just going to make you feel like you're getting burned. And it can maybe cause a blister if you have like directly applied for a long time. Yes, this was developed by Raytheon in the United States. It's a heat ray. So this was designed for area denial, meaning riot control, perimeter security, so keeping people from going in, and crowd control. It works by heating the surface of targets, such as the skin of targeted human beings. Right? And the big controversy here is that Here we go. On August 20th, 2010, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department announced its intent to use this technology to control incarcerated people in the Pitches Detention Center in Los Angeles. And in 2014, there were reports that Russia and China were developing their own versions of the active denial system. You know, okay, this is what they say. For the first millisecond, it just felt like the skin was warming up. Then it got warmer and warmer, and you felt like it was on fire. As soon as you're away from that beam, your skin returns to normal, and there is no pain. So, this is a pretty fantastical weapon. Long story short, it's not that effective. Like, if you use this on me right now, I can go like this, and it won't really burn me because it's just not... the wavelength is just too short. But this is called a directed energy weapon. This is a directed energy weapon. They literally have laser rays that they can shoot at you from a range. And if you're sitting there protesting, right? If you're sitting there protesting, they can shine this right at your eyes. And I don't know what happens when it hits your eyes, but you can do a lot of damage. And with that, and in the last month or two, we've seen the willingness to spray people with pepper spray, mace them, treat them pretty brutally in the streets. And the military has all sorts of toys that they've developed that they haven't used yet. The active denial system has not been used on people in any significant way, but that's only because it's not that impressive. It's a fantastical weapon, but it's not... I don't think it's that effective, right? So they don't use it. Now, one thing that is more effective is the long-range acoustic device. These fucking things you see, the police officer here. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't see this. I was not showing this to you. Yeah, so you didn't see it. Whatever, man. Active denial system. Okay, fine. I'll look it up. I gotta have some commitment to journalism, right? So here it is. This is what I was talking about. Directed energy weapon developed by the U.S. military. It's called the heat ray, since it works by heating the surface of targets. Developed by Raytheon. Okay, one of these big military companies. So it fires a high-powered beam of 95 gigahertz waves at a target. Okay, causes radiation burns. So please look it up, you know. That's why I show you this stuff. And here you have the long-range acoustic device, the LRAD, which is really a sound cannon. It's a sound cannon. It's a sound weapon, and this has been used. It can cause permanent hearing damage. This is the type of shit that'll blow your eardrums, and this is the type of shit that the NYPD is going to use. Now, this is 2004. I remember these. I remember these in 2007, 2008. They were in the documentaries. They were in the documentaries of the conspiracy movement. I don't hear people talking about it that much anymore. I don't know what's happened to us. So they could do this in a couple different ways. They can just do a really loud announcement that you could hear anywhere, or they can do like a scramble, like a blast attack of just sound that is just extremely loud and debilitating. They also have sonic nausea, and this stuff really works. And you can police departments can buy a sonic nausea machine. So they're... Now, to my knowledge, the sonic nausea machine is also not like 100% effective. I don't know if I'll find it because I'm using Brave browser. So this is like a toy one. It's like a little battery. So maybe I should buy this and see if it works. But they have these for thousands of dollars that really work, and they play a frequency, a sound that basically makes you get sick, and then they use it as like a riot. That's really, you wouldn't use it even in that situation as a riot control type of a situation, but you could definitely use it to harass someone, and you get into gang stalking and targeted individuals. Electronic harassment, you look at electronic harassment, and it's seen as a delusion officially. Electronic harassment, electromagnetic torture, is a conspiracy theory describing the hostile use of mundane electromagnetic devices. Right? So these are people, they're called targeted individuals. People that are saying, hey, the people are fucking with me. They're blasting sound frequencies at my head. You know, everybody says they're crazy. Okay? That these guys, that they're torturing them with electronic devices. And this, a lot of people laugh at this. A lot of people laugh at this. And I know, I've seen the people that are clearly mentally ill. I know. I've seen the people that are on crack and they start hearing voices. I know. I've seen it happen. But you have sonic nausea devices and LRAD devices. And then also you have a government that is literally on record as saying, we want to figure out how to put something in somebody's head to make them act against their own programming and just totally consume them to control them. So is that not that? So it's a conspiracy theory here when it's called one thing, and then you change the name, you put a badge on it, you put a flag on it, and people just look right over it. They just don't see it when it's absolutely the same thing. This is electronic torture, okay, that they're doing to these people. And the LRAD, the Polish police have it already. It's been used. In fact, I think I should be able to find this. Look at this guy. Look at this fucking guy. LRAD operator. And you see he's at sea. So using this from ship to ship, it actually makes sense. But here's a section called deployment that I want to show you. And this tells you all of the times that they've used it, that they've blasted this sound cannon on the population, you know. And some of these were the COVID people who would not stay inside during COVID. So that's, now you're getting into the police state, what it's really going to be for. This isn't for military applications. This is to control the people, man. On such a high-tech level where you could shoot a beam at them, you know, shoot a little heat beam at them. Or you could just blast them with sound, right? You're not going to shoot them. You're not going to incapacitate them to make them permanently disabled. No, you're just going to shock them like the way you have the collar on a dog, right? Yes, here we go, Poland. They have this as well. Yeah. Oh. Okay, I'm glad I didn't skip over this. This is the worst one to me. In Spain, they used a vehicle-mounted LRAD to deliver alerts and notifications to residents during the COVID-19 lockdown. And they said, because the acoustic device can be heard inside of houses, we can inform older residents with mobility issues that all municipal resources are available. So don't take him word for word, because he's saying, oh yeah, so people who are handicapped and can't leave their bed, you know, this way we can make the announcement by booming loud so fucking hard it goes through the walls and windows, and everybody, every man, woman, and child hears it. And people bought this. How is this guy not dead? How is this guy not dead for saying some shit like that? I would strangle the fuck out this dude. Absolutely insane. You think about what he's really saying. What a sick joke of a thing to say. Yeah, the people that are handicapped and bedridden, they have phones too. They have a TV. They were glued to the TV. The reason you're blasting this stuff is because you're sending the message that there's nowhere to run. There's no place where you have privacy and oasis and peace and safe haven from us, the government, the military dictatorship that controls every aspect of your life. The end. Okay? The end with LRAD and active denial systems. But postscript, I want to show you this. These are Flock AI cameras. We've talked enough about human experimentation and all that. We've kind of transitioned to the new AI biometric world, the high-tech control, right? Maybe they're not going to kill us by spraying the skies, but they're definitely going to control every single part of us. And they're experimenting on us right now when it comes to mass surveillance and biometrics. And what you're looking at now is a map of AI cameras. Okay, these are AI cameras called Flock. Flock is the company. Now, this is from banishbigbrother.com is the link. You can't see it because it's covered by me, but it's banishbigbrother.com. You can go. Let's go to Milwaukee and see how many cameras are there. Actually, a lot more in West Berlin, huh? So here they are, and these are just the ones that people have put up there, right? Now, if you go to Flock, which I'm curious about this. Flock camera, Flock Safety. Okay, this is the company. This is the actual company. To solve and eliminate crime, you need evidence. Protect your community, business, or school 24/7 with coverage that never sleeps. This is their website. I want to see their cameras, products. Cameras, license plate readers. Here they are. These are the AI cameras. Now, they call them license plate readers, right? They're actually not license plate readers. I'm hoping to be able to explain this to you, and if I can't, I'm going to show you a Louis Rossmann video, who I have to shout out once again. I'm happy to shout him out once again because he is doing an awesome job, and he brought this to my attention. Okay, this is the proof that this is not a license plate reader, but an AI camera, as you see it here, because this is not just reading the license plate. You already have license plate readers, and that's the tolls that when you go, where you drive through Illinois or Pennsylvania, you don't have to pay the toll. They're just scanning your license plate, and they could do that. Look at this. No plate, no problem. Capture more detail with vehicle fingerprint and Flock freeform. Turn images into actionable evidence. No plate required. So here they are, and once you see this, you may realize that, hey, I've seen these things before. And then, of course, this is part of a network, national LPR network, right? They have these mobile security trailers. Oh, these are at Home Depot a lot. License plate readers. No, these. Does this look like a license plate reader, or is it a fucking camera? So a lot of neighborhoods are against this. They're trying to get it banned. And it's in my own neighborhood. They're down the block from my house. But I will actually end with this video from Louis, because he deserves it, and you should share this with people.
There was a woman who was driving to an appointment with her tailor in Colorado about a month ago, and as she's on the way to her tailor, there was a theft that took place at an unrelated person's house. She had a doorbell camera, which meant they would have been able to see who did it, right? Makes it easy. Should be able to catch him. No. The police chose to have ChatGPT and a telephone pole do the work for them. They looked through and they saw that a Flock camera captured the license plate of somebody in a green Rivian, which is the person who went to their tailor. They went to her door with a summons, and the police officer said the following.
There is zero doubt. I wouldn't have come here unless I was 100% sure.
When the woman asked to be able to see the footage that demonstrates that she is guilty, they would not play her the footage.
I'm not going to extend you any courtesy of showing you a video when I don't need.
But I can show you videos.
No, you cannot.
She says that she can show the officer video footage demonstrating that she was not there at the place and time that they claim that she was there, and he interrupts her to say, no, you cannot. You are not allowed to prove your innocence. No. And he actually said this afterwards.
You know we have cameras in that town, and you can't get a breath of fresh air in or out of that place without us knowing, correct?
If you want people to move to your area and pay into the tax base that pays the police, you might not want to say out loud, and I quote, you can't breathe in this town without being surveilled, because that's just not the flex that you think it is. If a sheriff comes to my door, and I am far from an ACAB anti-police type of person, and said you can't breathe in this town without us seeing it, I'm the fuck out of there. Like, my house is going on Zillow the next day. He refuses to show the doorbell footage. And he issues a summons with the December date. She's actually pretty smart. She goes about this as well as she can, and she creates a Google timeline showing all of her movements. The CCTV video of her entering and leaving. She shows all the footage from her dash cam, which shows that she was driving while this took place. The GPS records from her vehicle that show that she was not at the scene of the crime when the crime took place. The photo of the outfit that she wore that day, which is different from the outfit of the person that was captured in the doorbell camera, and witness statements that demonstrate that she was somewhere else when this occurred. She did not submit this to the sergeant who visited her. She submitted this to the police chief, who then immediately dismissed everything. Charges dismissed, summons voided. There was no explanation provided. There was no apology provided. They had ChatGPT on a telephone pole try to do their job for them. And if this woman did not keep track of everything she did that day, then she might have actually been screwed. What that police officer said when he said there's a 100% chance, no doubt, what he's actually saying is, we are filming you. And what you need to do is you need to film yourself all the time in case we get something wrong. So he kind of shifted the burden of proof from innocent until proven guilty to guilty unless you record every movement you make throughout the day to rebut ours in case we get it wrong as we're recording all of your movements throughout the day. The answer to a surveillance state being installed without your consent in your city or your state or your country is not to start surveilling yourself all the time. Well, I appreciate that this woman had all this information on herself. She had her GPS coordinates. She had her Google timeline. She had all this information. How many people take pictures that are time-stamped with their clothing every single day just in case they're going to be accused of a robbery that they did not commit? The answer is not to record what you do every single day to the point where we are now spying and surveilling ourselves in order to be able to respond to this. The answer is to not have the surveillance apparatus to begin with. Many of you have been going to your city council hearings, you've been emailing your representatives, and you've been telling them that you do not wish to pay to live in an authoritarian Chinese-style police state, where you're being watched every given moment by an AI surveillance camera that can be accessed at the click of a button without a warrant by any Tom, Dick, or Harry in city government. You don't want that. You think it's a bad thing. And you've tried to make your voice heard. And as you could see in Denver, your voice was ignored. Unfortunately, across the country, your voices are being ignored. If you're going to stop being surveilled all the time, if you want these cameras to truly go away, you're going to have to start taking a little bit of a different approach. You're going to have to try a little bit harder. You're going to have to put in a little bit more work. That's going to be necessary. Unless you want people in your local community that have power over you to be bragging like this. I am not an ACAB person. It would be impossible with the contents of my channel over the past 13 years to brand me as one. This is not okay. In no world is what that man is bragging about okay. We have a Fourth Amendment in this country, and it means something. And while there will be simps that try to pretend that we don't, or that try to twist it into claiming it means something that it doesn't, it does mean something. We have the right to not be spied on everywhere that we go for the rest of our life. Push back against this now. Push back hard. Because if you don't, this is going to be here forever. If there's anything that you can learn over the past 20 years, whether it's private or public, when any sort of type of surveillance or privacy violating tool comes to light and starts getting used on a regular basis, it never rolls back. This is too important. There is too much potential for abuse, and clearly there are far too many errors. It cannot be trusted. It should not be trusted, and it needs to go away. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. You know what you have to do. Now get to work.
Woo! Oh, yes. Now we get to work. Yeah. And I'll get to work as well. Actually, I'll be getting to sleep. Thank you for sharing another episode with me. Hope you've enjoyed. Sorry if it was a little bit scattery at times. Hey, scattermind or not, brain fog or not, no matter what state we are in, I'm going to keep moving forward with this thing. I've got plenty more stuff to share. I did my episode on Friday because I want to get to those things and I don't want to get boxed in. So I got my 3-year anniversary of this week in Tyranny in like 2-3 weeks. So it's actually kind of crazy. Yeah, I don't feel old yet, but yeah, it's never too early to be desperate. To play with desperation, it's the kind of thing they say with sports is, there are some guys who just play like every play is going to be their last. It's a good thing to try to aspire to, even though obviously none of us can be workaholics. We're all going to need some time off, a break here and there. So, much love and cheers to everyone. It's okay. It's okay that we haven't freed the world yet. But we will, and let's get to work and do it. It's a lot more fun to be productive at your work as opposed to be a procrastinator who knows that a lot of work needs to get done. So, lots of love to everyone, both tough and soft love. So take it easy, and I'll see you next week, yeah?